Elizabeth, it's great to see you again.
Lovely to see you too. How are you?
Wonderful. Welcome to Change and Triumph. So it is wonderful to meet with you and just learn a little bit about your journey. One of the things that I was so excited about your background, you transitioned from scientist and headhunter to a luxury business authority.
Yeah.
So looking back, what was the biggest mistake you made when first entering the luxury sector, and one that most people wouldn't expect?
Right. Well, that's a fantastic question, actually. I'm glad we're starting with that. I think for me, oddly enough, I was trying to fit into the luxury space. I thought they spoke a certain way. I thought they needed a certain highfalutin kind of buzzwords. But then I discovered that the people who were in my community, who were attracted to what I had to say, it was because I was able to break down certain complex or high-end thinking or actions and make them translatable and relatable to people, because people are fascinated with luxury, but there's a fear, there's a barrier. So being able to overcome that barrier and then break it down for people in my own voice was the most unconventional thing, because I honestly thought nobody will take you seriously unless you sound like an academic. But the feedback I was getting was that, yes, there are books about luxury out there, but it's in highfalutin language. So they needed something that makes it accessible. So I think for me, my general advice is be authentic and retain your own voice. And that's how you're going to succeed in luxury.
Wow. Well, that just takes me right to the next thought that I had, which is about your new book, Luxpreneur. It drives deep the high-end markets, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what unexpected passion or practice have you discovered through writing Luxpreneur that now fuels your daily work?
That's oh my God, another fantastic one. I think for me, and I had to think about this, but I think for me, it was the fact that we see and record and observe more than we think. So for me, my ability to have a look at the different types of luxury clients, for example, and being able to articulate the 8 different types made such a huge difference to the readership of my book, because many people just say, oh my God, I want to attract the people that will pay me what I'm worth. That's what many people want, and that's what many people feel. So, and I believe you don't necessarily have to be in the luxury space to be able to identify with the 8 different types of luxury clients, because these same people we know them in real life. And what the book has been able to do is make people go, my God, there's a client I know that's exactly like this. There's a friend I know that is exactly like that. Because at the end of the day, these people are human. So for me, the daily practice is when I observe something to write it down. And I do that daily. I literally have a journal. It's not just journaling, but it's what I observed about a certain situation and how can that be useful for me, or how can I translate it for other people into business? So that's a daily practice that I'm very, very mindful of doing every day.
Wow. And with this podcast being about change, I want to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
How did you get from being a scientist to getting into luxury?
I know many people are fascinated. It's a long and convoluted journey, but I believe that everything works together for good. So for me, I studied microbiology at university, and I got my master's in medical microbiology and parasitology. And my ambition was to actually become a professor of microbiology. That was what I wanted. I love books. I love studying. And in fact, all my professors had earmarked me for that path. And then I started working in a hospital as a scientist. And then I remember after about 15 years, I kind of thought, there's got to be more to life than just this. There's another part of my brain that I'd like to explore. And I didn't want to die a lab rat. So I kind of thought I wanted to go into business, but I had no idea what the business was going to be. But I knew I wanted to leave the labs. I then realized that my current network wasn't going to get me what I wanted. So I started networking. I didn't know what I was going to do, but eventually through networking, through curiosity, I would say pathological curiosity, I was able to talk my way. I got a job offer as a headhunter with no background in headhunting. But then I realized that I'm a very quick study. I was able to think to myself, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to learn? And I also realized that I needed to network because the people I was working with, they probably went to school with, they had the right skin color, they were the right gender, they had the networks because they went to school with these people, but I didn't. So what I quickly realized was I needed to network in a different way. So around that time, we're talking about the early 2000s, blogging was like, this was like maybe like web 2.0.
Basically like Instagram is.
Exactly. So blogging was the thing. And then I read a Forbes article and I discovered that CEOs had blogs. And I then made a note of all the CEOs that had blogs. And I would make sure that as soon as they publish, I realized that many CEOs would publish Sunday afternoon for some weird. So if you want anything from a CEO, email them Sunday afternoon.
That is a true statement. I get a lot done on Sunday.
Exactly. So I'd respond on a Sunday and they'd respond back. But, because in those days, not many people responded to blogs or commented on blogs. So I was able to network that way externally. Then internally in the company, I realized that there was only one person writing articles for the company website, and that was the boss. And then I said to him, would you mind? He was like, oh my God, I'd be so relieved if you wrote articles. So he would vet the articles. I'd write them, he would vet them. So, and because I realized that when people landed on the homepage, the first thing they saw were the articles. So that meant people saw my name and people thought maybe I was important. So these were little things I did.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And you are a quick study. My goodness.
Yeah, so I just thought, okay, let me try. And I think also it's a risk. And I said to myself, what's the worst that can happen? Is it a sackable offense? If I do something wrong, maybe, but at least let me try. So a combination of networking, et cetera, and then headhunting. I was enjoying it. I loved it. But I started my side hustle, which was making cakes on the side while I was headhunting. But nobody knew in the office.
Oh.
Nobody knew. Because I didn't put my face on my website, I did nothing. And then 2008, the pandemic, not the pandemic, the
it might as well have been a pandemic.
Yeah. So we knew that recession hit, and then I was out of a job. And then I thought, let me just go for it and set up my cake business. So I then did the cakes full time. And then I did a couple of other things to try and get high-end clients, very basic things that many people overlook. But one of them was I took the yellow pages and I started calling every event planner in the yellow pages. And after calling about 120 planners who all said no, I then called the office of a particular planner, and she happened to be the cousin to the late Queen Elizabeth.
My goodness.
She was,
and, I'm so fascinated with this story because I'm hearing nothing but transition.
yeah.
And you're transitioning based on what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
And what the needs of the world are. You're serving the world, and then you have that go for no energy. And so I don't know if you know that book. It's called Go for No.
Yeah.
Know that book? Yeah, where it doesn't matter how many no's you received, you kept going until you got to the yes, and look at where it got you. Amazing.
Absolutely. Also, I say that the quicker you get through the no's, the quicker you get to your yes. So for me, being told no, I mean, today, I've written to 10 people and 9 have said no, but 1 said yes. So I don't care about the no's anymore.
Yeah, you have to understand the theory of large numbers. No's are more common than the yes. Yeah. So all you have to do is get through the no's until you get to the yes, just as you've said. Awesome.
Yeah. So I called the office. I then said to her, Because I thought to myself, okay, what's the best way to pitch? But I didn't want to pitch over the phone. I just said, oh, by the way, I'm going to be in your area in the next 2 days. Can I drop some samples for you? Because again, sometimes you have this thing in your head. I'm thinking, I'm a Black woman. He's, very, royal, very posh. So I literally just dropped some samples. I just said, samples from Elizabeth. I didn't even act like I was Elizabeth. I just said, oh, delivery from Elizabeth. And I ran out of the office. But by the time I got home, I got a phone call saying, Lady Elizabeth would like to see you. So I then turned back. I went back to see her. And she said, right, I'd like to place an order for 200 cupcakes, please. And that was just like that. But the lesson for me wasn't the order. The lesson was I undercharged. I didn't even charge for delivery. I didn't charge for setup. I was just so grateful and so happy to get that high-end order. I severely undercharged.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. You could have given them away for free because what that advertisement that you served the queen, what that meant could get you thousands of orders.
Exactly. So, and this is the best bit for me. After the event was over, Lady Elizabeth then wrote me a handwritten letter to say that my cakes, apparently they had 3 cake makers served for that particular event, and my cakes tasted the best. And she said, you can use this testimonial on all your marketing.
That's amazing. Like I said, you could have given them away for free. It doesn't matter.
The most generous, I mean, for her
you could have paid them just
exactly
for that.
Exactly. So the dollar value of that in terms of advertising, PR and marketing is unbelievable. So yeah, so that's how I got into the luxury space. Ended up working around the world. I shipped my cakes around the world. I traveled around the world. Then I got invited to speak at many events and conferences, because a lot of people, when they think about cakes, they never think about cakes being a luxury item. So for me, it's being able to redefine that kind of cakes are very much a luxury item. And when you think about a wedding, they're just as important as the flowers or the photography or whatever. But anyway, and that was how I got into the luxury space.
Wow. So you identified a gap in luxury business literature with Luxpreneur. When you first realized that gap, something nearly held you back from writing this book. And how did you push through it?
Okay, so I honestly thought, what else would I have to say that all the experts haven't said? So that was number one. And also another question I had to ask myself is, why me? And again, if we look at I'm going to go back slightly. If we look at the business literature world, on the bestseller list, even mainstream normal literature or books in the book world, it tends to be dominated by men, white men in particular. And the luxury world is actually a lot more worse. I don't see that many people of color giving opinion pieces in the luxury world. So we have that. So there's that. So there, along comes myself, cake maker. What would a cake maker know about luxury? So I then had to work. And again, this was all in my head, by the way. And then I remember talking to a friend of mine, and she looked at me and said, but what do you know about luxury? And this again, so even sometimes the call is coming from inside the house, as they say. So I then had to push past that, okay, if you were to write a book, what is a book that's needed out there? It's not about me. It's about what's needed. And what is the one question that people ask you the most? And the one question people ask me is, how can I get rich clients? How can I find rich clients? And that was a question that made me say, you know what, if people are asking, it's because there's a need. And then I got the opportunity to pitch my book to a publisher that publishes business books. And they said, of all the pitches, yours was the best. We're very excited. But then they decided that the market wasn't big enough for the book, because they honestly thought the market's not big enough. And having spoken to a number of people, I just I knew it would be difficult to get a publishing deal. It generally is anyway, because when you look at the numbers, 99% of people who pitch never get a publishing deal. And of the 1% that get a publishing deal, majority will be a certain set of people. And Black women, we probably get 0.03% of all publishing deals. And if we do get those publishing deals, we tend to have to do our marketing ourselves. So I then said to myself, you know what, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Let me bet on myself and let me independently publish. And I think for me, it's the best decision. I'm just so happy that that's the outcome. So identify the gap in the market and don't be afraid to let your voice be heard and to invest in yourself.
Now, you mentioned it earlier about 8 different archetypes.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit more about that? If you could give 3 immediate strategies for businesses to tailor their offerings to these client types, what would they be?
Okay, so 8 different types. I'm just going to use 2 examples. So they're both white male. They've both been married twice. They both live in castles and they're both rich. And they're both the same age, but born in the same year. So demographics will tell you you need to treat them the same. But according to my archetypes, they're completely different. And who are the examples? King Charles, our king, and the late Ozzy Osbourne. So King Charles is the archetype that I will call comfort first or security first. So they're all about personal comfort. It's not about the money. Some people might define them as old money. I don't define old money, new money. I define them according to habits, etc., not when they acquired their money, because that's a very important distinction. And somebody like Ozzy Osbourne, I define as an innovator, trendsetter, because he likes doing things differently. Then you also have another type that I call simply the best. So they want only the best. They go for the big names, the brands. It's all about how they look to other people. And it's a validation of all the hard work that they've done. Then there's another archetype that I call the aesthets. So the aesthets are all about, and people think it's all about how things look. And then what I had to do, I did a bit of research into how their brains actually work. So it's not just about how things look. It's how they make sense of life, and it's how they order life. So to somebody like an aesthete, if you're presenting, you need to be orderly. You can't be random, and you need to curate for them, and you need to be precise because they are precise. But for somebody who's a comfort first, like King Charles, they will buy from you because they feel comfortable around you. They know you are loyal and discreet. You're not going to blab all over the place. And with them, it's almost as if you're operating on a gentleman's agreement. So they know, they feel you're loyal to them, they feel safe, and your product doesn't necessarily have to be the best. They tend to buy generationally as well. So they would go to where their father went, where their grandfather went, etc., etc. So it's a generational thing with them. So I break up, there's a lot. I really, really break it down in the book. I give loads of details, and I even tell people where you can find a particular type of luxury clients and how to approach them and the do's and don'ts and that sort of thing. So that's a rough example.
That's amazing, because the fact that you've broken down those archetypes and figured out exactly what type of person and what they like, that's just so major. And that generational thing is eye-opening. That is really eye-opening. So running a luxury business requires a different playbook than mainstream models. That's what you're telling us in general. So what's one principle you found that starkly contrasts with traditional business practices? And why is it non-negotiable in luxury?
I absolutely love that question. And I tell you why. Because the contrast for me, while writing my book and doing my research, was that the iconic luxury brands today were not started by people who came from luxury. You take Coco Chanel, for example, grew up in an orphanage, and she actually went against the fashion at that time, which was all elegant and obviously, she's elegant as well, but it was all, frou-frou and, lots and lots going on. She went for simplicity, which was opposite. Then you look at somebody like Gucci, who founded Gucci. as a 17-year-old, he left his village in Italy and he came to the UK to work at the Savoy as a bellhop. So we will call them a porter. You probably will call them a bellhop. So it was while he was handling luggage that he realized and began to educate himself on high-end leather goods. Right? So that was the observation at that time. Then the third example I'm going to use is Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton left his village when he was 13 and he walked 300 miles barefoot to Paris to start a new life. And
300 miles.
300 miles. And again, when he became an apprentice to a leather maker, a box maker in those days, like a trunk maker, he made an observation that many people just took for granted. He noticed that a lot of the trunks had rounded tops, so you couldn't stack them on top of each other. So he created a trunk with a flat top. And so the three people I've mentioned don't have a posh background, but they all have one thing in common. They made observations that other people didn't see, and they also were authentic and brave enough to say, this is the kind of thing I'm going to do. So to answer your question, the quality you need to have for a luxury business, for a playbook, is a lot of people say, do market surveys, do competition surveys, etc., and you still do that. I would still advocate that people do that, but there is something around your own voice and authenticity and what you are observing that other people are not, that makes sense. So, and again, more recent times, you've got somebody like Steve Jobs, who gave us the iPhone, something we didn't know we needed. So that to me is the foundation of a luxury brand playbook.
You know what's really interesting about those stories? The three brands that you named all had extremely humble beginnings.
Yeah.
And they are the most famous today.
Exactly.
So what people assume is luxury is actually the opposite. It's luxury because of the branding.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily because their thought process. So when you talked about your friend asking, what do you know about luxury? Really, it's irrelevant. It's whatever you brand it to be and the people you market to. That's what it sounds like to me.
Exactly. Also, luxury is not necessarily a big brand name. For some people, I mean, some of the client archetypes I've mentioned, for some of them, it's time. For them, luxury to them is time. To some of them, luxury is space. To some of them, luxury is loyalty. So when you look at luxury from their perspective, and you understand what luxury is to them, that is what you sell to. Your product, don't get me wrong, is relevant, but it almost becomes irrelevant because they perceive you as meeting certain needs that the other products are not. So that is why they say luxury is emotional. It's not necessarily the tangible, materialistic thing that many people think it is.
This has been so eye-opening. I mean, you are just such a wealth of information in this space, and to speak to you because of the British accent and because of who you know and things that you've done, I mean, you wouldn't realize how down to earth you actually are and where you came from and how you got there. And so it's just fascinating. Because of that, you founded the Diversity in Luxury Awards to champion inclusion, which is such a blessing. What's a common misstep brands make when pursuing diversity in the luxury space?
Wow.
Yeah, and what should they do instead?
Right. Okay. So for me, what I see many brands do is they put maybe a couple of black faces or people of color in an advert, done and dusted, diversity done. Let's go to the pub now or something like that. For me, when I talk about diversity, especially the Diversity in Luxury Awards, it's about inclusivity, but it's also about you as a brand understanding how your brand behaves in a certain culture. So let me give you an example. So for the awards, for example, we found a needlecraft school in India that does embroidery for Dior and MS. Nobody has heard of that needlecraft school. And then to use another example on the extreme end, when the chief executive of Chanel was appointed, she came from a non-luxury background. She came from Unilever, and Unilever, they make your soaps, they make your body creams, etc. And
Wow.
she was appointed. And when she was appointed, she did something crazy. And not many people know this. So Chanel have a fund for the education of girls. This fund is 20 million euros, which is a lot. That's a lot of money.
Right.
So she then took that fund from 20 million to 100 million.
Humongous.
And
Wow.
and this was within the first 90 days of her appointment. So, and as a headhunter, I thought to myself, who does that? That's crazy. So that's why she won the award, that we gave her. But my point is, what I've just told you are examples of diversity in action. So you've got the Needlecraft School in India that does embroidery, not because they're Indian, but because they are jolly good at what they do. You've got somebody in very high position who is using her power and influence for the education of girls around the world. So what we do with the awards is we go all around the world. It's a global award. So we look for best examples. For example, another award winner is a jewelry maker in China, very, very well renowned, but he actually makes sculptures in titanium, a metal that is notoriously difficult to work with. So, we're talking about craftsmanship, we're talking about skill. And for me, if people of color are the ones who actually spend a lot on luxury relative to their income, there needs to be representation. And we need to be showcasing brands that are diverse, that are doing incredible things in the luxury space. So that is why I created the awards. And also for established brands that are doing incredible things. Maybe they're having galas, they're raising money, they're encouraging artists in different parts of the world. They need to be showcased as well. So that's what we do with the Diversity in Luxury Awards.
And how could one enter the award? Do you choose yourself, or can you enter? And how often are these annual awards?
Yes, it's an annual award. It takes place in January of every year. September is when we announce that anybody can enter, as long as your business is truly luxury. So it's a combination of open entry, and as well as the judges also finding good examples around the world, because we realize that we might not be able to reach as many people as possible. So it's a combination of both, but anyone can enter as long as the business is truly luxury, because sometimes people feel their business is luxury, but unfortunately, sometimes it is not, or sometimes they undersell themselves. So we've seen all sorts. So we try to encourage people to enter and to give really good examples when they enter.
Now, I am going to poke you a little bit here, because it sounds like you have a criteria for luxury. And when you think about Louis Vuitton example and the Chanel example you provided, they simplified luxury. And so the traditional meaning of luxury from your earlier examples changed because they changed it. So what do you consider to be luxury for the awards? Because you said, oh, it's not luxury. So what is luxury then?
There is a definition of luxury. Luxury is felt, it's seen, it's noticed, it's observed. So if you present a certain way, even if you're not, like I gave the example of the Needlecraft School in India, for example, to the naked eye, they are not luxury. But when we look at the work, when we look at the impact, when we look at what they do, then we realize the outcome is luxury. So that is what, so I don't care, who you are. I don't care what corner of the world you are. But if you're an old woman, for example, you could be an old woman in Portugal, and this is a real example, old woman in Portugal, no website, and you only do a few pairs of shoes a year, but your processes are luxury, as in the way the leather is what's I don't want to use the word obtained. So processing, obtained, the way you craft those shoes, the fact that it might be one of a kind, etc., etc. So it's not about size, it's not about scale, it's more about the outcome. Can I look at it and go, oh my God, we can feel we can notice. That to me is the essence of luxury. So because it's not about fancy, flashy, whatever.
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that.
And
I have
yeah.
a friend of mine who dresses in luxury, and you do feel the difference because he only has custom shoes and custom suits. And so, right away, he's a business colleague, that he didn't get that off the store shelf. Not
Exactly.
his shoes, not his suits. Every little piece of him is like made for him.
Yeah.
And you actually can feel and observe that. And it has nothing to do with name brand.
That's the point. So because
It.
some of the people we've shortlisted or who have won, in fact, the one thing I love about the awards is that the attendees are like, I've never heard of this hotel before. I've never heard of this blah, blah, blah before. How did you find these people? And that's what we're trying to encourage. Because if the big brands are winning all the time, then what's the point?
That is a fact. Oh my goodness. Wonderful. So true inclusivity in luxury spans cultures, identities, and geographies. What single guideline do you recommend to ensure brands' authenticity?
I know it might sound simple, but I would say to any brand, be yourself, because especially nowadays with millennials and Gen Zs, they know when you are faking. And whatever you claim you are, they will investigate and they will find you out. So I would say be yourself. Let your tone of voice be yours. And there is no wrong tone or right tone. It's just yours. So let it be yours. Let it bring something. And I would also say, if you can, don't be afraid to bring something different to the table. Because I think many people think, okay, because Louis Vuitton is doing that, I need to do that. To give an example, even an established brand like Schiaparelli, when they had a creative director, Daniel, I think it's Daniel Roseberry. He brought something different and something fresh to Schiaparelli. He brought back the quirkiness. He brought back the real custom one-off pieces. He brought back the catwalk being not just a runway, the couture shows being that element of storytelling. So you look at a piece and you think, oh my God, did human hands literally create this? And for him, it wasn't about just the celebrity sitting on the front, on the front row. It was all about the piece. In fact, I don't even care who the celebrity is. I'm more interested in the pieces. So that for me is an authenticity. Sometimes that many brands lack because they're busy chasing a celebrity culture or what they think Gen Zs would like. They lose their own authentic voices. So that for me is, your tone of voice, be yourself, is what I would say.
Love, love, love that, because people do find you out.
Yeah.
You are right. You are right. The extensiveness that I do, and today with AI,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. It's daily now, but I will research someone. I have specific prompts to do due diligence and to research companies that we intend to do business with to make sure they are who they are. And we look under their skirts. We really do. We will dig into the company, and then we'll dig into each of the founders, and simple things like not having a LinkedIn profile and it's so funny because at this level of ultra high net worth investors, they may not have a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's not.
I don't want to be bothered by
them don't have a LinkedIn profile, but there's other things that will allow us to know who you are, and if what you're saying you are and you do. If we're even talking to you, then we know, And there's so many prompts now for investigations, and now with ChatGPT 5, it's like the first prompt that I had is almost not as good as the new ChatGPT 5. So, and we're only at the beginning of this AI journey.
Absolutely.
You have been nothing but triumphant in your life. Such a blessing to know to have you on the podcast and Change and Triumph. I think this entire story has been nothing but triumph. It's been change, moving with the times. Now you've found your love. It sounds like you love what you do.
I love it. I'm going to correct you slightly and say it's not all been triumphs. There's been some really low lows. I'm not going to lie.
Of course.
There's been some lows, but but I think it's about moving forward and resilience and keeping going. And yes, I absolutely adore the luxury sector. I really, really like I like ideas and concepts. And like I said, I'm pathologically curious. I'm still down the rabbit hole. I don't know when I'm going to surface, but for now, with my book in particular, I'm just so grateful with the reception that it's getting. So yeah, I'm thrilled.
So we're going to have in the show notes all the information about Luxpreneur and how one can buy your cakes and order cakes. And are you these wonderful luxury cakes, are you worldwide, or are your cakes specific to a territory?
I would say for the right price, I am worldwide. So
of course,
if people have a private jet, for example, or they own an airline, then that makes life easy. So yeah.
Of course it does. And actually, I mean, I know many ultra high net worth investors that would fly in a cake from across the country for an event. Absolutely. And I'm sure you get those orders, especially when the queen herself says that your cake was the best at their gala. I mean, that is the most. I don't think there is a higher praise than that. Like, can you get any better? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think any newspaper could do better. That's the highest of the high, unless maybe the president of the United States said the same thing. That would be.
Yeah, that would be it.
That would be it. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And that is the end of this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. That was amazing.